Welcome back to Gotham Trends. Today we're going to be diving deep into this ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas.
Yeah,
It's been making headlines, but we're
yeah.
going to kind of go beyond just the surface and really unpack how we even got here.
Right. We'll examine, the political maneuvering and the motivations of all the key players
Yeah,
and the impact this could have on the region, long term.
absolutely.
Yeah.
To understand this ceasefire, we really need to go back to May 2024
Okay.
when the Biden administration tried to broker a deal.
Yeah.
Can you kind of remind us what happened?
Yeah. So at that time, the Biden administration announced this significant breakthrough in these negotiations.
Right.
They were claiming that they had gotten assurances from Israel,
Mm-hmm.
the UN Security Council. They even endorsed the framework for this thing.
Wow.
But as the details were being hammered out, everything just kind of fell apart.
What went wrong?
Well, Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad negotiators, they claimed that Israel had backtracked on some of these terms that they had already agreed upon,
Oh,
particularly regarding control of key areas,
yeah.
like the Rafah border crossing
Yeah.
and the Philadelphia corridor, which is that strip of land along the border between Gaza and Egypt.
Got it.
So Hamas, they felt betrayed
Totally.
and the deal collapsed.
And totally. The Biden administration's efforts, they ultimately failed.
Right.
Then you have the 2024 election,
Mm-hmm.
and Donald Trump wins.
Yeah.
And he appoints Steve Witkoff,
Interesting choice.
right, a real estate tycoon,
Yeah.
as his special envoy to the region.
Wow.
Not your typical diplomat.
No, not at all. I mean, Witkoff is known for, that blunt, no-nonsense style.
Yeah.
There's this story about him scheduling a meeting with Netanyahu's aides on the Sabbath,
Okay.
fully knowing that Netanyahu himself doesn't even really observe it that strictly.
Right.
It was just this clear signal that he was not interested in playing games.
Yeah, he's not messing around.
Right.
So that's pretty bold. It seems like Trump's pressure and Witkoff's tactics,
Yeah.
they really forced Netanyahu's hand.
It seems that way. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this approach compared to more traditional diplomacy?
Well, it's certainly unconventional.
Yeah.
Some might argue that it's disrespectful or even
Right.
that it could further escalate these tensions.
Yeah.
But it does seem like it created this urgency that was lacking before.
Interesting.
It forced both sides to confront this reality
Okay.
and consider some options that they probably would have dismissed previously.
Yeah. So let's get into the details of the ceasefire agreement itself.
Okay.
What does it look like?
Well, it's this three-phase structure. The first phase is a hostage exchange.
Okay.
And it starts with the release of just the vulnerable individuals.
Got it.
Like children and the sick.
Mm.
For example, the Bibas family,
Right.
who were tragically taken hostage in 2023.
Yeah.
They're expected to be among the first ones released.
That's a glimmer of hope for those families.
Yeah. Definitely.
What happens in the second phase?
Okay, so the second phase involves a temporary cessation of hostilities,
Okay.
followed by a full ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli forces.
So, and the third phase?
That's where things get kind of tricky.
Okay.
That third phase focuses on reconstruction and the future governance of Gaza.
Gotcha.
It's definitely the most complex part of this whole agreement.
Right.
And there is a lot of skepticism,
Totally.
particularly from Hamas and the Palestinian negotiators.
What are they worried about?
Well, they're worried about potential Israeli violations
Mm-hmm.
because Israel has a history of intensifying attacks just before they finalize these deals.
Wow.
And they also want concrete guarantees on the details
Yeah.
of the troop withdrawal and the buffer zones and the future governance of Gaza.
Okay.
They want maps, they want timelines, they want assurances.
Yeah.
Basically, they just don't want to be caught off guard again.
Understandable,
Yeah,
given their past experiences.
right? There's this deep-seated mistrust.
Yeah.
And rebuilding that trust is crucial for any kind of lasting peace.
Absolutely. Now, on the Israeli side, we have hardliners
Right.
like Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich.
Yeah.
These are members of Netanyahu's coalition government,
Right.
and they've been very vocal
Yeah.
in their opposition to any concessions to Hamas.
Yeah.
Could they derail this ceasefire?
They definitely could. I mean, they're a wild card.
Yeah?
They've scuttled previous ceasefire attempts.
Wow.
And their whole ideology is fundamentally opposed to any kind of peaceful coexistence with Hamas.
Okay.
They view any concession as weakness,
Got it.
which puts Netanyahu in a difficult position.
Totally.
You know, it makes you wonder how much of this deal is about resolving the conflict
Right.
and how much of it is about Netanyahu's own political survival.
It's like he's trying to walk a tightrope.
Exactly. He needs to appease the hardliners in his government
Right.
while also trying to secure a deal that'll actually hold up.
Wow. What a delicate balancing act. It really is.
Speaking of complexities,
Okay.
let's turn to the West Bank.
Right.
The situation there is becoming increasingly volatile.
Yeah, it is. We're seeing these escalating tensions and violence fueled by settler attacks. The Palestinian Authority is cracking down on armed resistance.
Right.
And there's renewed Israeli airstrikes.
Yeah.
It's a powder keg over there.
It sounds like it.
And it's concerning that it's not getting as much attention
Right.
as the conflict in Gaza.
Yeah. And then you have this alleged quid pro quo offer from Miriam Adelson,
Yeah.
a major Republican donor to the Trump campaign,
Right.
regarding the annexation of the West Bank.
Okay.
What do you make of that?
It's a concerning development, to say the least.
Yeah.
It raises serious questions about the influence of money in foreign policy
Right.
and whether this ceasefire is truly about peace or just serving other agendas.
Adds another layer of complexity
It does.
to an already really convoluted situation. Right. And it highlights the need to scrutinize the motivations of all the players involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground already, but this story is far from over.
Yeah. No, it's not. The coming weeks and months are going to be crucial.
They are. We need to see if this ceasefire holds,
Right.
how it's implemented,
Yeah,
and what the long-term impact's going to be.
definitely. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. We'll continue to follow this closely
Of course.
and bring you guys the insights and analysis you need to make sense of it all.
For sure.
But for now, we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back,
Yeah.
we'll delve even deeper into the potential ramifications of this ceasefire
All right.
and what it means for the future of the region.
Sounds good. You know, it's interesting to think about Blinken's recent statement on Hamas.
Yeah.
He said that their resistance is growing, even in the face of, like, overwhelming force.
That does seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think, like, increased pressure would lead to less resistance?
Well, that's the traditional thinking. But I think Blinken's statement suggests the opposite is happening.
Okay.
It kind of highlights the limitations of a purely military approach to this whole conflict.
Yeah.
Like, the more you try and suppress a population, the more their determination to resist seems to grow.
So what's the alternative then?
Right.
If force isn't the answer, how do you get lasting peace?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
I think it requires addressing the root causes of the conflict.
Okay.
The things that fuel the resentment and drive people to these extremes.
Yeah.
Things like poverty, lack of opportunity, and the feeling of being unjustly treated.
And probably sense of hopelessness, too.
Absolutely.
You know, if you feel like there's no chance for a better future,
Yeah.
why not fight?
Exactly. That's why it's so essential to create some sense of hope. Like a
Yes.
belief that things can actually change.
Yeah.
And that requires more than just words.
Right.
It needs concrete actions that demonstrate a genuine commitment to finding a solution.
Earlier, we were discussing the Trump administration's unconventional approach to the conflict,
Right.
particularly with Steve Witkoff as negotiator.
Yeah.
What are the potential long-term implications of this approach? Could it actually lead to a more durable peace, or is it just delaying the inevitable?
That's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump's art of the deal strategy, it's a gamble. It could backfire spectacularly,
Totally.
leading to even greater instability.
Oh, wow.
But on the other hand, it could shake things up enough
Yeah.
to create an opening for some real progress.
So it's a high-risk, high-reward scenario.
Precisely.
Okay.
And a lot depends on how both sides respond to this new dynamic.
Right.
Will they seize the opportunity to break free from the entrenched positions of the past?
Yeah.
Or will they just retreat further into their respective corners?
It's fascinating how these individual personalities
Yeah,
can have such a profound impact on global events.
absolutely.
You know, you have Netanyahu facing pressure from hardliners in his own government.
Right.
You have Trump with his unpredictable and often abrasive style.
Yeah.
And then you have someone like Witkoff, this complete outsider thrown into this incredibly complex situation.
It's like a real-life political thriller.
It is.
Yeah.
And the stakes are incredibly high.
They are.
We're talking about the lives of millions of people,
Yeah.
the stability of an entire region,
Right.
and the potential for a wider conflict.
It's a lot.
This is where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
If we zoom out and look at this from a broader historical perspective,
Yeah.
we can see this recurring pattern.
What's that?
Times of great upheaval often create the conditions for transformative change.
Yeah.
You're saying that chaos can sometimes be a catalyst for progress.
Exactly.
Wow.
When the old structures crumble,
Yeah.
when long-held assumptions are shattered,
Right.
it opens up the space for new ideas and new
yeah.
ways of thinking.
So this ceasefire, this moment of relative calm, could actually represent like a pivotal turning point.
It's definitely possible,
Wow.
but it'll require bold leadership,
Yeah.
a willingness to take risks, and a commitment to finding common ground.
What are some of the key things that we should be watching for
Hmm.
in the coming weeks and months?
Okay.
What's going to indicate whether this is a genuine step towards peace or just another like temporary pause in the conflict?
Well, first we need to see how this ceasefire is implemented.
Okay.
Will both sides adhere to the terms?
Right.
Will there be violations?
Yep.
Will they use this time to like rebuild trust or to prepare for the next round of fighting?
So actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We also need to pay attention to the political dynamics
Okay.
within both Israel and Palestine.
Got it.
Will Netanyahu be able to hold on to power? Will Hamas face internal challenges from more radical factions?
Right.
The answers to these questions are going to have a huge impact on the future of this whole peace process.
And what about the international community?
Yeah.
What role can they play in supporting this ceasefire and helping to build a more lasting peace?
They have a really crucial role to play.
Okay.
They can provide financial assistance for the reconstruction of Gaza.
Yeah.
They can pressure Israel to ease the blockade. They can act as mediators and guarantors of the agreement.
Right.
But ultimately, the success of this ceasefire depends on the will of the parties involved to actually make it work.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the political maneuver and the strategic calculations, the power struggles. But at the heart of this conflict are human beings.
Yeah.
Families who've lost loved ones, children who've known nothing but war communities. They've been torn apart.
It's awful.
Their voices need to be heard.
Absolutely.
Their needs addressed.
For sure.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
From the collapse of the Biden framework to the unconventional tactics of the Trump administration, the complexities of the ceasefire agreement, the volatile situation in the West Bank, and the broader geopolitical context.
It's a lot to process.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it's essential that we engage with these issues,
I agree.
that we try to understand the different perspectives, that we don't shy away from the complexities.
Definitely.
Because ultimately, this isn't just about some abstract political conflict happening somewhere far away. It's about the kind of world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
A world where peace is possible.
Right.
Where differences can be resolved without resorting to violence.
Absolutely.
Where every human life is valued.
Well said.
So for those listening, what resonates with you? What questions are you grappling with? What insights have you gained from this deep dive? We encourage you to continue exploring this issue, to read beyond the headlines, to seek out diverse perspective, and to challenge your own assumptions.
Because the search for peace is a journey we must all undertake together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, it's been great.
Into the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
Me too. You know, we really should acknowledge the human cost of this whole conflict.
Yeah.
The hostage families.
Right.
They've endured unimaginable suffering.
They really have.
I mean, their pleas for the return of their loved ones have been met with silence threats and attempts to discredit their stories.
It's awful.
It's a stark reminder of the brutality and the dehumanization that often accompanies war.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it makes it even more clear how urgently we need a solution.
Yes.
One that addresses the needs and the rights of everyone.
Right.
Not just the powerful.
Absolutely. Any sustainable peace agreement has to prioritize the well-being and security of ordinary people.
Yeah.
It needs to create a future where families don't have to live in fear, where children can grow up with hope, and where communities can rebuild.
Jeremy Scahill, the investigative journalist who's been following this so closely.
Right.
He believes that this deal will likely be finalized before Trump's inauguration.
Okay.
But he also cautions that Netanyahu is known for last-minute maneuvering.
Oh, yeah. So there's still some uncertainty.
Definitely. Nothing is guaranteed.
Right. There are so many factors at play, so many potential spoilers.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're even here, that a ceasefire is in place, is a reason for some cautious optimism.
I agree.
It gives us this window of opportunity, however fragile, to work towards a more peaceful future.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
It has.
We've explored the complexities of the ceasefire, the motivations of all the key players, the potential pitfalls, and that glimmer of hope this moment represents.
And we've highlighted how important it is to look beyond just the headlines.
Yes.
To understand the historical context, to consider the human cost, and to recognize that peace isn't just the absence of war, but the presence of justice, equality, and opportunity for all.
So as we wrap up, what are your final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I would encourage everyone to stay informed, to engage in dialogue, and to support efforts to build bridges between communities.
That's great advice.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by how complex this is and how intractable it can seem.
Right.
But just remember, every act of understanding, every voice raised for peace, and every effort to challenge prejudice and promote empathy, it all contributes to creating a more just and peaceful world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Israel-Hamas ceasefire.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. And for all of you listening, thank you for subscribing to Gotham Trends. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a pressing global issue. Until then, stay curious.